Before dawn on 25 August 1942, rain fell hard on a narrow strip of jungle and mud at the far eastern tip of New Guinea. The rain soaked rifles, filled trenches, and turned the ground into thick black slime. Somewhere in the dark, Japanese boots moved silently through the trees. They were certain of victory. They believed the enemy in front of them was weak, untrained, and already breaking. What they did not know was that a single Australian infantry battalion, exhausted, outnumbered, and half buried in mud, was about to stop the Japanese army for the first time in the Pacific War. And nothing in the Pacific would ever be the same again. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below. To understand why Milne Bay mattered so much, you need to understand the moment the world was in during mid-1942. Japan had swept across the Pacific with terrifying speed. Hong Kong, Malaya, Singapore, the Philippines, the Dutch East Indies, one by one, they fell. The Japanese army had built a reputation as unstoppable. Allied forces had learned to expect defeat. By July 1942, Japan was pushing south toward Australia itself. Their plan was not to invade Australia directly, but to isolate it, cut it off, and make it useless to the Allies. New Guinea was the key, and Milne Bay was the door. Milne Bay sat at the eastern tip of Papua, a wide, shallow bay surrounded by thick jungle, swamps, and steep mountains. It was hot, wet, and miserable. But it had something valuable, flat ground where airfields could be built. In early 1942, Allied planners realized that if Japan captured Milne Bay, they would control the air routes along the New Guinea coast. Japanese bombers could strike deep into Allied positions, threatening Port Moresby and beyond. So the Allies moved fast. In May 1942, Australian engineers and American units began carving airstrips out of the jungle. They worked under constant rain, mud, and disease. By July, 3 airstrips were operational. To defend Milne Bay, the Australians sent infantry. Among them was the 61st Infantry Battalion of the Australian Army, part of the militia, not the regular AIF. These men were not battle-hardened veterans of North Africa. Many were young. Some had never fired their rifles in combat. Japanese intelligence dismissed them as second-rate soldiers. That mistake would cost Japan dearly. The 61st Battalion arrived at Milne Bay in July 1942. They were commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Edgar Frank Frankham, a professional officer with First World War experience. Frankham understood discipline, preparation, and terrain. He knew his men were not elite, but he believed they could fight if used properly. The battalion dug in around the airfields, building defensive positions in mud that never dried. The men slept wet, ate wet, and fought disease as much as any enemy. The Japanese plan to capture Milne Bay was bold, and in their minds, simple. Major General Yano Mitsuru of the Japanese Navy's Special Landing Forces believed Milne Bay was lightly defended. On the night of 25 August 1942, around 2,000 Japanese troops landed near the village of Wagga Wagga. They were naval infantry, well-trained and confident. They expected a quick advance, a short fight, and total victory. What they did not expect was the terrain. Milne Bay was not open ground. It was jungle broken by swamps, creeks, and razor-sharp kunai grass. Movement was slow. Visibility was poor. Heavy rain fell almost every afternoon, turning tracks into rivers of mud. Japanese soldiers carried light equipment, but even so, every step was hard. Their supplies lagged behind. Communication became difficult almost immediately. The Australian defenders, including the 61st Battalion, were spread thin. The main fighting force at Milne Bay included the 7th Brigade, made up of the 9th, 25th and 61st Battalions. Brigadier John Field commanded the brigade. He understood that if the Japanese broke through to the airfields, everything would be lost. He ordered a fighting withdrawal strategy. The Australians would slow the enemy, bleed them, and hold the airstrips at all costs. The first clashes happened almost as soon as the Japanese moved inland. On 26 August, patrols from the 61st Battalion made contact near KB Mission. The fighting was close and brutal. Rifles, grenades and bayonets were used at short range. The jungle swallowed sound. Men could be 10 metres apart and not see each other. The Australians learned quickly that the Japanese were aggressive, skilled and fearless. The Japanese learned something too. These Australians did not run. As the days passed, the Japanese pushed forward, but they paid for every metre. The 61st Battalion fought delaying actions, falling back to prepared positions, then striking again. Lieutenant Colonel Frankham kept his men focused on one goal: hold the airfields. Every order was simple: hold your ground, watch your flanks, trust the man next to you. On 27 August, the Japanese reached the edge of the airfield area. This was the critical moment. Japanese commanders believed the Australians were near collapse. They ordered a final push. That night, under heavy rain, Japanese units attacked Australian positions head-on. The fighting turned savage. Machine guns fired until barrels overheated. Men slipped in the mud, crawled forward and fought hand-to-hand. The Australians used Bren guns, rifles and grenades with deadly effect. At the same time, something new entered the battle: Allied air power. From the very airstrips the Japanese were trying to capture, Royal Australian Air Force and US Army Air Force's planes took off again and again. They attacked Japanese landing areas, supply barges and troop concentrations. Japanese soldiers, used to air superiority, suddenly found themselves under constant attack from the sky. Supplies ran low. Wounded men could not be evacuated. Morale began to crack. The 61st Battalion played a crucial role during these days. Holding positions along the coastal track, they blocked Japanese movement and forced them into narrow approaches. This made them vulnerable to artillery and airstrikes. Australian gunners fired accurately, guided by forward observers who risked their lives to spot targets. Every Japanese attempt to regroup was hit hard. By 29 August, the Japanese attack had stalled. They had failed to take the airfields. Their casualties were mounting. Food and ammunition were running out. Disease was spreading. The rain never stopped. Australian counterattacks began to push them back. The same jungle that had slowed the Japanese advance now trapped them during their retreat. On the night of 30th August, Japanese commanders made a decision they almost never made. They ordered a withdrawal. Under cover of darkness, surviving Japanese units began pulling back toward their landing beaches. But the Australians did not let them go easily. Patrols from the 61st Battalion harassed them constantly. Small groups moved through the jungle, attacking from unexpected angles, then disappearing again. Every step back cost the Japanese more men. By 30th August 1942, the battle was effectively over. Japanese forces evacuated what they could by barge. Many were left behind. Some drowned, others died of wounds or disease. The Australians had won. For the first time in the Pacific War, Japanese ground forces had been defeated in a major land battle. The cost was real. The Australians suffered casualties, including men from the 61st Battalion who never returned home. But the victory at Milne Bay changed everything. It proved that Japanese forces could be beaten. It gave Allied soldiers confidence. It forced Japanese planners to rethink their advance in New Guinea. Milne Bay did not become as famous as Guadalcanal or Kokoda, but its impact was just as important. The single Australian battalion that stood firm in the mud helped stop Japan's southern advance. Their discipline, endurance and refusal to break under pressure made history. Years later, veterans of the Aiki 61st Battalion would speak quietly about Milne Bay. They did not talk about glory. They talked about rain, mud, fear, and mateship. They talked about holding the line when everything said they should fail. And in that dark, wet corner of New Guinea, They proved that determination could change the course of a war. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.